Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Scott Luton and Greg White with you here on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's live stream. Greg, how you doing today?
Good. Very good. I'm doing good.
Wonderful. Well,
A
I know
little
you've
bit of
had
a late travel day yesterday.
yes, you were on assignment in Las Vegas, which we're going to dive into
Right.
second half of the show. Had a great time. I saw some of the pictures as we were
Oh, you get those
celebrating.
pictures?
I
Okay,
saw a
that's
couple
good.
of them.
Oh, that's good.
So maybe the world has seen them. I don't know,
My social
but
media manager.
but great to have you back. I'm
Yeah,
looking
thanks.
forward to picking your brain. So, folks, we're going to talk, of course, today's Supply Chain Buzz coming at you every Monday at 12 noon Eastern Time as Greg and I and friends walk through some of the biggest global news stories across the world of business, especially supply chain, as you might expect. But we're going to pick Greg's brain and have some
Mm.
fun toward the end of the show around three things to do in Vegas and one thing not to do in Vegas. So, stay
Ooh,
tuned for
I
that.
bet there's some opinions on that.
So, hey, we want to hear from you. Tell us not only what you're tracking across global supply chain, global business, but if you've been to Vegas, give us your inside tips too.
Mm.
Greg, of course, we want to hear from all of our friends. Use that chat bar. We enjoy hearing where folks are from, getting their take. And folks, if you're listening to this podcast replay, because we publish the audio podcast version of the Buzz, usually on
Right.
Friday mornings. If you're listening to that, hey, check us out live on LinkedIn, YouTube, or any other social media channel of your choosing on Mondays at 12 noon. We'd love to hear from you. Greg, what else would you, as we make that a warm invitation out to our global supply chain now family, what else would you add to that nice warm invite?
Golly. Well, listen up and don't forget to tell friends about this, right? I mean, you're going to get to hear from, not just on this show, but on other shows, you're going to get to hear from some of the most prominent practitioners, and we're interviewing yet another um, leader of supply chains in the next couple days. Right? Is that
That's
tomorrow?
right.
I think it's.
I think it's every day,
Well,
but
it is. You're right, but I mean, I'm thinking of one in particular, City Furniture, right? So,
oh, that's right. Andrew Koenig, right?
right, right,
Uh,
and then of course, a lot of solution providers who are out there sharing stories of their customer success and that sort of thing. So, tune in,
that's
learn
right.
something,
Tune
guaranteed.
in, tune in, listen up, and it's a money back guarantee. Money back satisfaction guarantee.
That's right.
Hey, look, quick heads up. I noticed earlier today, LinkedIn was having some issues. So if you're tuned in via LinkedIn today, that might be interfering with your ability to comment. Just giving you a heads up. You know that happens from time to time. All right. So, Greg, let's share some learning opportunities with all of our listeners out there. One of our next big shows is this Thursday as we welcome in Greg Davis with Grant Thornton on our. We've got this ongoing featured mini series, all right,
Yeah.
focused on decoding digital transformation, sponsored by our friends at Next World. And this next installment, Greg, we had such a blast on the first one. This next installment is going to be focused on what's next. Greg, should be one heck of a show, huh?
Yeah, look, digital transformations, big topic, anywhere, all the time. But there's kind of layers to it. Like onions have layers and donkeys have layers. There's layers to digital transformation. So we're going to talk about kind of the various levels and layers that you can approach and attack the enormous project that is digital transformation, right? And Greg may be at the draft, the NFL
Yes,
draft, when he does it. I wonder if he's going to use that as a backdrop. Tune in for that.
absolutely. And I'm glad you called that out, Greg, because Thursday night is the first round of the NFL draft, and no telling. I hope the Falcons get the Chiefs pick because the Chiefs don't need any more talent, and the Falcons need a lot more. So, can we work out that deal, Greg?
Yeah. In fact, by the way, Scott, in Vegas, there were quite a few Falcons fans out there.
Okay.
So they were proudly wearing the colors, and I gave them a rise up whenever I saw them.
Right, right. Well, all good fun. Looking forward to the draft. Okay, so quick update. Big thanks, of course, Catherine and Amanda behind the scenes helping make production happen. Looks like we are having an issue with the comments coming in. I see Josh, Glarimar, Nazreen, Leah Luton, mom's with us. Felix, Tasha,
Mhm.
all joining us from different parts of the globe. We'll see if we can't get that ironed out over the next hour, but welcome in everybody. Okay, Greg, we were just talking about learning opportunities with this live stream conversation this
Right.
Thursday, again, April 27th, 12 noon. So y'all join us. The link's in the chat. Also, over the weekend, we published the latest edition of With That Said. That's our weekly LinkedIn newsletter. This time focused on, since Saturday was Earth Day 2023. It had a lot of Earth Day related, Earth Day focused content. And it's so true. We entitled it, There Is No Planet B. A little play on Plan B versus Plan A.
I like that. That was pretty good.
Well, we shamelessly stole it, right? Like most good ideas. But
Right.
folks, we encourage you to not only check out With That Said, but more importantly, think about, of course, with all of these holidays, we've got to find a way to bake it into our mindset year round so we can drive meaningful action. And that's what we want to encourage y'all to do. If you do anything, stop and think and figure out how you can act. Greg, your thoughts around Earth Day and sustainability, ESG, you name it.
Well, I mean, I think there are a lot of people that are accidental environmentalists, including my great grandparents, who said, turn off the lights when you leave a room and don't brush your teeth with the water on and things
Right.
like that.
That's right.
Don't run the thermostat down. Were you born in a barn is an act of environmental activism, by the way. So,
Right.
I think what we have to acknowledge is, look, I know this has gotten super political, all this ESG stuff, but what's the harm in taking care of the planet? So I've been a rock climber and hiker for a long time, and the number one rule is pack out what you pack in. So I think there are just a lot of little things that you can do and then contribute to some of these bigger challenges. And this whole Planet B thing, I don't know about if anyone's ever thought about it this way, right? Everyone's thinking about Elon Musk going to Mars, and I think Elon Musk happens to be possibly one of the smartest people that exists on this planet. But rather than go to Mars and build a dome over Mars once we've destroyed the atmosphere here, why not just build a dome over our planet here, where we have a lot of the infrastructure that could help us capitalize on that? I mean, if such thing ever happens, right?
Yes.
So let's not forget that some of this is very capitalistic and in some cases hyperbolic.
Yes. Well, hey, when we do that, build the dome, Pauly Shore will be involved, as he was in the famous movie. Was it Biosphere for the 90s? Big flop. Do you remember Pauly Shore from MTV, Greg?
I do remember him from MTV, and I remember he had some movies, right? But
not real. Yeah. That wasn't the best part of his career, I guess. All right. Love that perspective, Greg. It's so true, folks. Just regardless of some of the politics out there, do good.
Something.
That's
Yeah.
right. Let's take care of our planet.
I mean, there's no harm in being more environmentally conscious. That's what we used to call it back in the 80s, I guess, right?
And as Amanda's sharing, Biodome was that movie with Pauly Shore. Biodome.
I do remember the name. Fortunately, I don't remember the movie.
Oh man! All right, so y'all check out. With That Said, join 21,000 of your fellow practitioners and friends and members of the Supply Chain Now Global Fam that have been tuning in and giving us feedback around that. And then finally, speaking of, we were just talking pre-show about how the kids are all right. I'm not sure where that stems from. I think some song.
The Who. What's a Who song?
Okay, thank you, Greg. But the kids are indeed all right. And the latest example, and you can find plenty if you go looking. So got to give Vector Global Logistics a shout out here. This is my oldest daughter, Brantley, here in the chair. I took a snippet. It's tough to catch one when she's smiling. But Enrique Alvarez and the great team at Vector Global Logistics basically set up interviews with Greg, probably a couple dozen kids, I guess. And the kids all answered the question, why should sustainability matter to your company? And then we'll drop a link to this this LinkedIn post there. Y'all check out the video and all the responses. But Greg, brilliant brilliant. When Enrique reached out to me, it's been 2 months ago since they started setting it up. And then, of course, they push it on the post production and then publish the final product. These kids, we're in good hands. After we finish messing things up and get it into the next generation, these kids' hands, I'm telling you, it is amazing how intelligent and um, passionate, how visionary,
Yeah.
these kids are in terms of some of the simple steps and some of the more complex steps of actions that we should be taking. Greg, you may not have you got a chance to look at this video yet?
I haven't, but I want to. I love, I've always believed from the mouths of babes, right, comes so much wisdom. But yeah, I think I'm really interested to see what they're all thinking about.
I am too.
There have to be some new ideas out there. One of the things that jumps out at me is batteries, EV batteries, and all this rare earth mineral stuff.
Yep.
I've actually been, over the last month or so, just researching what the alternatives are, and there's some really good studies, for instance, out there. So if we can get some new insights in just thinking about the naivete of children forces them to think about things in a different way, and they aren't necessarily bound by the status quo.
Right.
And that's where good ideas come from.
So true, Greg. So true. And folks, Greg, we've talked about this countless times here, and you make a lot of great points. The EV whole industry, as we all know, is blowing up, right? I mean, if you look at future plans of some of the major car companies out there, traditional automobiles are barely, it's just a fraction. But Greg, you make a great point, because while we should all feel good, about the notion of using electricity, right? Especially renewable energy to drive automobiles. The flip side of that, of what all the destruction across the planet that goes into the huge demand for batteries and then some. Greg, we've got a lot more balance than to figure out so that it can be truly as sustainable as maybe some consumers think, huh?
Yeah, I think that we're going to need to find alternatives. They're already looking at. They found some meteorite magnetization. I think it's called tatanite. I'm sorry, I'd have to look it up. I was just reading about that today. But that can be simulated, and that can take on the magnetic properties required for semiconductors and that sort of thing. And that way we don't have to destroy the Earth's crust to get all these rare earth minerals to create the magnets that are required for a lot of electrification and that sort of thing. And of course, we've got the social challenges with cobalt. So much of that is mined by child and slave labor. So we need to attack those problems. I think we need entirely new technologies for batteries.
Yep.
But it's good to see that there is some really active awareness in not destroying the environment in a new way to avoid destroying the environment in an old way. And I think that, we didn't have that foresight before. We didn't have the knowledge to see what the potential damage was.
Yep.
Before, but now we do, and I'm glad we're taking advantage of that to already consider some more sustainable alternatives for our sustainability initiatives.
Yes, I really appreciate you pointing that out. We all need to go into this EV movement eyes wide open. I'm telling you.
Well, and it's going to happen fast. I don't know if you saw what happened at the Shanghai Auto Show, but China has about 30% of all new cars are EVs now.
Yep.
And whereas the German and Japanese brands and even some American brands were really popular, their sales are plummeting there. So Hyundai, which of course we know, their sales were down 40% last year in China.
Wow.
Because not only are the Chinese now way ahead on creating EV cars, but the look is more modern, and the Chinese consumers are falling in love with these cars. And there are some pretty good looking cars over there. There's one brand called Li.
Okay.
Li, and they have an L9, which is a great looking vehicle. So,
yeah. Hey, if it passes the Greg White automotive test, you've really
I'm very
earned a blue
particular.
ribbon.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I do think, and this isn't news, except this may not be news, but I do think that we need to start seriously about thinking about the next car purchase and whether that ought to be an EV, if only for the fact that EV, is hitting the exponentiality of the demand curve, and it will start to become a bigger and bigger portion of the consumer purchase, which will rapidly make fossil fuel vehicles worth zero. ICE
Right.
vehicles, right? Internal combustion engine
Yeah.
vehicles, they could be worth zero in 5 years. They are already, the prices are plummeting for ICE vehicles in China now. They have a
Mhm.
law that outlaws them in
Interesting.
July of this year.
Wow. Well, I read over the weekend, CNN had an interview with the senior leader of the Ford Mustang program, and I think she had been at Ford for over
Mach
30
E.
years. What's that, Greg?
We call it Mach E. Oh, is
Mach-E.
this the actual Mustang, or is
Yeah,
this
this is the real
the
one. This isn't a crossover.
Mustang that isn't a Mustang? Sorry.
Yeah, that crossover version. In fact, this executive didn't really want to talk about the crossover version because you could tell kind of between the lines, it sounded like she didn't think that was a real Mustang, which I think a lot of listeners may
A
agree
lot
with.
of Ford, a lot of Ford fans would agree with that sentiment.
Right.
So I appreciate her, whatever you call
But
it, dedication.
but check it out. It was a great, I love when we interview folks that you can tell they love what they do. They're not just charged with leading this project or whatever. Her grandparents, her parents, I think all worked at Ford. She loves the brand, loves the vehicles, and when you hear from leadership and supply chain manufacturing leadership that you can hear and see that passion, those are some of the best pieces. So y'all check that out.
Yeah.
Greg, we are going all over the place here on the buzz here today. And Amanda and Catherine, just a heads up, I still cannot see the comments. So folks, we'd love to hear your comments. We'll have to maybe celebrate them after the show, but let us know what you think on these stories. Let us know what you think around the EV movement. We'd love to hear your perspective. Okay, Greg, we are going to get officially
Mm.
into our first story here today because believe it or not, EV and batteries and Mustangs. None of that was part of our initial plan here today. But hey, good stuff. A lot of good stuff happening out there. Let's get into something we've been banging the drum on
Hmm.
for years and years and years. I mean, when it comes to cybersecurity, it's pretty scary out there. So, according to this great read from our friends at Supply Chain Dive, Greg, did you know that the number of supply chain cyber attacks in the first 2 months of 2023 is already surpassed 40% of last year's 2022 total number of attacks. Now that shouldn't surprise any of our audience members, right? Because we've been talking about this forever. But this article encourages you to consider three things. And I'm gonna get Greg's take after this. First, map out your tech suppliers, especially so that your procurement team is in the know, since they often are making transactions happen, right?
Right.
Second, add cybersecurity to the supplier contracts, make it a shared responsibility. And then third, train and empower employees across the enterprise, not just in procurement, but where everyone has a role to play, things they're looking for, protecting the enterprise. Greg, when it comes to cybersecurity, some of the stuff we're seeing out there from bad actors, or some of these both proactive and reactive steps that SMEs are suggesting. What are some of your thoughts here?
Well, I think you have to start with the people, because that, I mean, frankly, we're the weakest link. The example that they gave in this article was shocking, where someone not only faked the email of the CEO, but they deep faked a voicemail from the CEO by cutting together um, statements from public statements
Right.
and speaking engagements and that sort of thing to reinforce the yes, please send this enormous check to this vendor's bank account, new bank account. So they are very, very sophisticated out there. And of course, the supply chain, you know why the supply chain hasn't been as big a target until now is because here we go, Scott. Until the great toilet paper shortage of 2020, nobody knew what the supply chain was or that it existed, right? Now, as it's come into new prominence and bad actors have recognized that it's a laggard in terms of technology and awareness around cybersecurity.
Yeah.
They see an easy target. So it is important to train the people, but also I think this is a critical thing. It is another leg of or pillar of supply chain. Just consider cybersecurity up there with cost, right, and risk,
Yep.
and ESG. Just consider it another pillar of the supply chain to make sure that you secure it. So they talked about it's been 10 years since Target. It doesn't seem like it,
Right.
but it's been 10 years since Target lost 110 million people's data because an HVAC, a heating and air conditioning repair company, got hacked, and they got into the Target network that way. So
Unbelievable.
You have to understand the totality of your interactions in your supply chain and procurement areas, and you have to be aware and of course have that compliance element, just like you would for showing up on time, delivering a PO or delivering accurate quotes and the other things that you concern vendors with.
Yep. The totality of the risk. Again, eyes wide open, because that was 10 years ago, Greg. As you point out, it's hard to believe that was 2013 with the Target thing. And,
Right.
goodness knows it is amazing what we're doing with IoT, Internet of Things these days, and all the conveniences and comforts that it offers. But like with anything else, it's a double-edged sword. For all the conveniences and comforts and innovation, it opens up some doors for bad actors to do bad things. And, Greg, along those lines, one of our favorite episodes from, probably 600 episodes ago, Jack Allen with Cisco, right?
Right.
We had talked about how, and it wasn't Cisco, it was a different manufacturing company. It was based on a real story, though. A bunch of employees from a certain manufacturing plant would bowl in a league at a bowling alley down the road, and they all gave their contact information in the bowling league's website so they could keep up scores, all that stuff. Well, bad actors penetrated that, pieced intel together in some way that they could use that information to crack the credentials of the manufacturing email and perhaps ERP system, as I recall. Eventually, it shut down the plant.
Yeah.
So it really is scary out there. And folks, take Greg's advice, check out this article, consider the expertise that's in there, and most importantly, hey, get with your team and figure out what the current plan, what the current risk mitigation strategy is for this highly and fastly emerging threat that is all things cyber across global supply chain.
Yeah, these are not geeks in their mom's basement. These are highly intellectual and talented, driven, economically driven, and sometimes officially supported by various governments.
Yep.
I think we all know who they are, China and Russia. And,
Okay.
and so they are well heeled as well, right? They have their own science teams. They have algorithms and AI to train their solutions to figure out how to trick you and how to penetrate your systems. So this is a technology war, really.
So true. It is so true. All right. So we're dropping the link to these articles in the chat. And as Catherine and Amanda point out, yeah, LinkedIn's having a functionality issue here today. So a couple comments here. They're dropping them in the private chat for us. So thank you all very much. Tom Valentine. Hey, TV. Great to see you. I've seen how busy you've been. He says, great point. Great points, guys. And in the article, there are a lot of soft end points within the four walls that are never considered.
Right.
He says, heck, my new washing machine and dryer keep asking my phone to connect.
That's a really good point. And they make another good point, Tom, and that is they say vet those tech suppliers, because any tech supplier that, as they talk about, companies are growing really fast. Tech companies are growing really fast. But any tech supplier that doesn't have adequate cybersecurity is probably someone you should not do business with. It is so basic to be security certified, right? SOC X or whatever the number is these days, or the other types of certifications that don't take a risk on somebody who is not certified.
Excellent point. And Kim Winter's here with us today. Kim, great to see you. He says, well said, Greg. More than 30%, Kim says, of their Australian population has had their personal info stolen through hacking of tier one insurance and telcos or telephone
Oh my
companies.
gosh, are you serious? Insurance and telephone? Wow.
Unbelievable. Glormar
So they
says,
know a lot about what wines, what Shiraz, and what beers Australians drink.
right. Oh, a Shiraz. I love a good Shiraz, man. Let's see. Glormar says, great to have you, Glormar. Says, as I look at the Port of LA, I always wonder how it is physically and internally cyber protected. In the military, we are OD'd on cyber training and we have not been exempt from attacks. So I can only wonder about the vulnerabilities that our supply chain has. Excellent points.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah,
see.
and if you've seen the article about the IRS and how much 50-year-old technology the IRS has, and 40 and 30 and even 20-year-old technology, none of that is
Right.
cyber secure. And you can bet that in state governments with some of these ancient infrastructures like ports,
Yep.
we know that they are extreme laggards in terms of technology. So that is a significant risk, right? Unfortunately, our government is probably not defending us as well as other governments are attacking us.
Yeah, Greg, I hate to pile on, but you look at the nuclear technology, talk
Mm,
about archaic technology that's susceptible to a wide variety. They're reevaluating nuclear policies and security as we speak, and that's made it out to public knowledge. It's interesting. All right, one last point here, and by the way, Don is with us. Gene Pledger's with us. Great to see you, Gino. Kim says the wine's protected, guys. The wine's protected.
thank
That's good,
goodness.
Kim. We'll
Okay, that's
protect that
good.
Shiraz. Now, Donna makes, and one last point here from Donna. Donna, great to see you here this morning. She says, all of this begs making media literacy a priority in our schools. Informed users will be able to spot the fakes, which, we've all have seen all kinds of just completely AI generated content. And, my eye usually catches, there's still some looks. I've seen one commercial that's been hitting regularly and I could spot that it was AI driven right away. But man, they are really close to being able to fool even the sharpest of eyes. That's a great point, Donna.
Yeah,
Greg, you're going to comment?
yeah, it is. It's very difficult to tell. I mean, if you've ever seen any of these deep fake videos, they are very realistic.
Yep.
It's scary, but I think we'll wind up with advanced internal technologies to address the points that Donna and Tom and Kim have talked about,
Yep.
from the inside out or across networks to help secure not just individual companies, but between those companies as well.
Yep. Agreed. All right. So let's move to something less scary. So let's talk about what IKEA is up to. I bet we've
Yeah.
got tons of IKEA fans. I know Amanda behind the scenes here is a big IKEA fan. I might have some of this stuff right behind me. I
Yeah,
think
sitting at my IKEA desk right now.
right.
My Klorpnorf or whatever it's called.
Well, check this out. So CNBC reports that the popular Swedish home and furniture company is investing some $2.2 billion in its omnichannel growth. So, Greg, some of the things that picks up the tab on new stores and new pickup locations, with one of the company's goals being to improve accessibility while keeping products affordable.
Right.
It includes 9 new what they're calling plan and order points, where customers can get help on things like really big remodel projects. That continues this, as we've heard Gartner and many others report on, mass personalization, mass customization, right, at scale. Investing, a big part of the plan and the path forward is investing in more sustainable operations with IKEA. One goal is the modernization of the 51 existing U.S. stores for energy efficiency, also building out an all EV delivery fleet. So, Greg, when you hear some of this stuff here at a retailer that Americans have, folks everywhere have come to love and enjoy, your thoughts?
Yeah, my first question was, in these 9 planning and delivery points or plan and order points, Will they also have Swedish meatballs in case you go to visit there? Because it's a good and inexpensive meal. So that was my first question. But in all seriousness, I was a little bit stunned that there are only 51 stores around the country, but
Mm,
not as stunned when I have tried to order IKEA goods to be delivered to more remote locations in as you say, Scott, South Kakalaki,
right.
um, South Carolina, and but I think this is a recognition that they need to do better.
Yeah.
So, in 3 companies in a row, completely outfitted the office with IKEA desks, and that's how you meet people in the office when you're new in our companies, right?
Right.
You go in your first day, you do your HR paperwork, and then you assemble your desk and chair and meet all the people who want to help you know how to do that. Use an
Right.
Allen wrench, but um, but I think this is such a popular company. They have incredible quality goods for the prices.
Yep.
That this is just one of their other initiatives, and I see that they're blending it with their ESG initiative by including EV delivery vehicles, which is a big initiative for them. And of course, they have their own challenges in terms of the validation of some of those EV or ESG initiatives. But
Yep.
I like that they're blending the two here. I think there's a
Right.
great opportunity for more people to be exposed to these kind of things. One guidance I would give them, like they really care what I think, but one guidance I would give them is that the stores are not necessarily the weak point of the omni-channel experience. The website is. I don't know if you've ever bought and tried to have delivered goods from an IKEA, but it is, to use the Danish word, a kludge,
Hmm.
which isn't Danish at all, I'm sure, but it sounds like something they would name a table after, doesn't it?
So there's room for improvement, is what I'm picking up on that, Greg.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the weakest points, but they're so technologically savvy. I have no doubt that they'll pick that up. I mean, I could see them, using 3D imaging and that sort of thing.
Right. Well, speaking of, so I mean, I've never ordered from IKEA, but as Amanda put in the comments here, so true, Greg. I love IKEA, but ordering from them, Amanda says, online is a nightmare.
It
Hoping
is
this investment means a better e-com experience. Excellent, Amanda. And hey, Amanda needs no tips in terms of how to put stuff together. She runs circles around me, if we're being real honest and keeping it real around here. All right. I also want to point out one other thing. You kind of said with a smirk, South Kakalaki. I wonder where. First time I ever heard that phrase, and I grew up in Aiken, South Carolina. Mom might be there now. First time I ever heard that phrase, I was in the Air Force, and Staff Sergeant Vicky Vasquez, the pride of the Bronx, said that, and I looked out. I said, "What'd you say?" And we both just died laughing as she was talking about South Kakalaki, and I got the biggest kick out of that. And I wonder what she is now, doing big things, I'm sure. So
You think
Vicky
she
Vasquez.
invented that term?
No, I
That
don't.
would be
No, I don't think so. But I think she moved here. That was when we were at Shaw Air Force Base in Sumter, and she being from the big city of New York, coming down to rural Sumter, South Carolina. I
yeah.
bet she really embraced that term well. So, Vicky Vasquez, hope this finds you well wherever you may be. Okay, so Greg, let's see here. We tackled furniture and IKEA. That's really cool. Let's talk about some other upcoming things. We have got a great webinar. So, folks, I know everyone out there where we're getting our content from a variety of places, and we're using a lot of terms interchangeably. Today, Greg and I, if you're looking at this live, we're on a live stream, right? It rides across social. You just got to venture to one of our social channels and jump right in. Our webinar program is a little bit different, right? It's like a virtual event that you've got to register for. So on May 4th, we've got a webinar coming up with our friends at Evenflow and Infor. And Greg, it's all about data-driven supply chain management and optimization and success and what it means to Evenflow. Greg, this should be one of our recent faves, huh?
It is an event, right? I mean, this is a virtual event, right? So sign up, be able to participate. They a lot of the people that come and join us in these, they bring materials that are very valuable and educational. You get to hear about actual companies using actual technology to seek and gain actual outcomes. And that's what's so great about these webinars, is being able to, to understand how a company takes technology and process change and applies that to change their business.
Yep.
That's the toughest part, is not just visualizing, but understanding and validating what the potential outcome is, and then how did you get there? How did you get there, and what did you go through to get there? That is so incredibly valuable for companies and people to learn.
Well said, Greg. That's May 4th, 12 noon Eastern time, with our friends again from Even Flow and N4. And come to be cool like Greg White, or come for all the reasons Greg just laid out there, because you will be better off, I promise you, by the time you leave. And hey, our team has made it easy. Thank you, Catherine and Amanda, and all the folks behind the scenes. The webinar link to register, again, you got to register for webinars, but it's free. It also comes with a money back satisfaction guarantee.
Right.
Y'all check out the link right there in the comments. Okay, Greg, let's see here. That was the webinar. I think I've got one other thing I wanted to hit here. Some listener feedback. And Greg, I don't know about you, but I love to hear from our listeners, our viewers, all the folks that make up our dear Supply Chain Now Global fam. This came from Joshua Usita, I bet it is, up in New York. He says, quote, I always look forward to listening to the Supply Chain Now podcast. It's clear the amount of dedication and work your team, so true, puts into the production of the podcast. I always find the episodes to be a wealth of knowledge. Keep up the great work. Joshua, man, that makes our day. Thank you for taking the time to shoot this over to me, I think via LinkedIn. Greg, what comes to your mind when you hear stuff like this?
Thank you. Mostly, I'm glad that that's the way it's being received, because that's the intent, right? I don't know if everybody realizes, they probably do. You're much more professional at this than I am, but we're not talking heads. We are practitioners, right? We're just practitioners trying to share some knowledge, share some talented people, and some companies that are making things happen out there. And the kind of information we want to get, or would have wanted to get when we were practitioners. And but I'm glad that it's coming across the way it's intended.
Greg, I agree. And, we're seeing that on the consumption side, the views and the watches. Folks, man, we, as I think I shared on LinkedIn a day or two ago, as we collected some of our most popular recent YouTube episodes, I think I dropped 6 or 7 shows in the last few weeks, and they've averaged over 7,000 views. So that is remarkable, and big thanks to all of our global audience out there being with us on this journey. And thank you.
You know what's interesting about that, Scott, is that was actually, even though we're in the biz, if you want to call it that, that was news to us. And Catherine shared with us, one of our producers, shared with us that about 70% of podcast consumption is occurring now on YouTube. So we've really ramped up our efforts there. And I guess the double bonus for folks, Scott, is they don't just have to listen to us. They can look at us too.
And typically they can comment and be part. So again, we got a little functionality.
While we're live. Yeah.
That's right. We're live today. Always live on live streams, and LinkedIn's having a little issue where a lot of the comments come in from, but hey, we'll get it fixed. I bet we're on the horn.
So go and join Tyrone Thorpe T Squared on YouTube. That's where he tunes in, and never have a problem as far as we've experienced, right?
That's right. Just like Catherine here, who's tuned in via YouTube, talking about the IKEA. She's like, yes, I love IKEA. But Catherine says she can't get very much delivered 2.5, 3 hours from ATL, from Atlanta.
It's true.
So y'all jump over to YouTube if you'd like to comment. We'd welcome your thoughts here as we get into the last 20 minutes or so of the show. All right. So Greg, we've got one more story that we had a lot of, I dropped this story, I think last week, across social, and had some interesting commentary and comments made on the post. So I want to talk about this interesting article from our friends at CFO, right? CFO magazine. It talks about something we have focused a ton of conversations around here: cross-functional communication and collaboration, aka silo busting, as Greg and I've had a lot of fun talking about over the years. So recent data from a survey of 1,000 supply chain leaders as conducted by SAP and Oxford Economics, only 47% of these supply chain leaders say they communicate well with the finance team. Now, to Greg, that sounds very high and optimistic number to me. I would think single digits still. But anyway, as the survey says, that they're self-reporting, only 47% of these folks say they communicate well with the finance team. But by folks, these are supply chain leaders they are surveying. From a visibility standpoint, now this is interesting because this goes to, Greg, some of those things we talked about when we're talking about automotive and EV and some of those issues that are persisting, right? Because there's still a lack of visibility. Get this, from a visibility standpoint and across the ecosystem, right? Not just tier one. Only 32% said they had a highly collaborative relationship with tier two suppliers. That doesn't surprise anybody. Only 25% said the same for tier three suppliers. This doesn't surprise you, but this really illustrates the challenge, right? When we're responsible for the whole ecosystem of rooting out modern slavery and rooting out child labor and all those ills. We're responsible for it taking place, but we don't very often, sadly, have our eyes and ears on what is taking place or where it's taking place and how we can do something about it. Greg, your thoughts here around these figures or around some of the challenges that continue to persist because of these challenges?
Well, first off, these numbers, I would question the definition of, what was it? Communicating well?
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Or else these were because it's an SAP survey, they may be very, very large companies that have very sophisticated supply chain organizations. Because I would argue that probably 32% of companies overall don't even know who their tier two suppliers. Those are their tier one suppliers.
Yep.
And if 25% of companies even know who their tier three suppliers are, I would be absolutely stunned. So I think what we have to recognize is that this is not a survey of the broad supply chain. This is most likely a survey, and I didn't look, Scott, I didn't look at the details of if they went into who they surveyed, what size companies, but because they're SAP companies, they have to be multi-billion-dollar companies. Yeah. So
that would be my assumption as well. Yep.
These are the numbers of the most sophisticated of the supply chain practitioners out there, and I would still argue that this is overstated. So let's just say these numbers are accurate. It means that less than half of companies are coordinating, even communicating well with their finance team. And coordinating is really integrating, right? With their finance team is what's really, really critical, because there is so much back and forth data and information and guidance that can be provided between those two entities. So I think there's a long, long way to go here across the broad supply chain, and even so in the among the most sophisticated of companies.
Yep. Well said, Greg. A long way just to there's a long way just to do business better, and even a lot longer way to get to some of those ills we were talking about in terms of slavery and child labor, right, that sadly global industry is taking advantage of to fill this exploding demand. So supply chains are going to there's going to be a reckoning.
Well, there is, because the compliance or the regulations in various countries. Germany just passed yet another law where, much like we have in the U.S., where if you cannot affirm that anything made in Xinjiang province, where they typically use Uyghur slaves for production, if you cannot affirm that your product built in Xinjiang province was not built by slave labor, then the Customs and Border Patrol in the U.S. assumes that it was. So you are guilty you're presumed guilty rather than presumed innocent. And now they're doing that in Germany and other countries across Europe. So now it's not just emissions, right? The E of ESG, the environmental concerns, but now they're focusing on social as well. So the the playing field is getting more and more complex every time there's a new regulation passed.
Mm. All right, so y'all check out this this read here again from the folks over at CFO Magazine. Let us know what you think about that. Greg, we got a little more time on our hands than I thought we'd have here today. It's probably because we can't bring everybody's chats in because there's been a lot of comments we can't get to here today. But Greg, I want to do this. You came back. You had a big travel schedule here recently, right? Went to
Last week, last week I was in LA on Monday, Tuesday, back to the East Coast on Wednesday, and Thursday, and then left Friday to go back to Las Vegas. It was Vicky's birthday, so she wanted to go to Vegas, baby. Vegas.
Happy birthday, Vicky. Happy belated birthday. I know we called it.
7th birthday.
All right. So I want to offer up to folks, Vegas hosts all kinds of conventions, all kinds of meetings and trade shows, you name it. A lot of our fellow global supply chain practitioners a lot of them have been to Vegas for something along those lines. Maybe some of them are getting ready to go, right? Because in-person events are back, thankfully. So, Greg, what would be, and we don't have to be too serious with this, we can have a little fun with it. What would be 3 things that you would suggest to people that they do in Vegas, and 1 thing that you would suggest to folks don't do in Vegas?
Yeah. There's so many things. One is do go to the Cosmopolitan and see the chandeliers that they have hanging all over that place. You don't even have to like chandeliers. It's just that they went to all the effort to do all this really cool stuff with lighting in that place. I would say that's a big do. This is a surprising do. Do drive 55 minutes outside of Vegas to Mount Charleston, where it is still completely snow covered. It is fascinating to go into Vegas and look to the west at the mountains and see Mount Charleston that is completely snow covered. It's a 55-minute drive. It's super cool view. Do take in a show, but only the best shows. There are a lot of really, really mediocre shows. Basically, anything that is Cirque du Soleil, you have to see. O is incredible. Mystere is incredible. Love, which is the Beatles one, it's good. It's okay. We loved it because, right, we like the music, Scott, but it was somehow not quite up to O and Mystere, I would say. So those are the 3 things that I would suggest you do is go see a show, go to the Cosmo, and go to Mount Charleston. Most people probably won't go to Mount Charleston. I should probably have added a 4th.
Hey, let me add a quick comment about the shows, Greg. Because we took in Amanda's always wanted to see David Copperfield, and say everyone can say out there what they're going to say about David Copperfield, but let me say this: I want to say he's in his 70s, and I'm going to tell you his level of performance and the physical nature of his performance and the showmanship. It is no wonder why he has been so successful. We saw him in person there, and he's out amongst the audience and the comment and the all the attendees. It is remarkable. It is remarkable. So yeah, I echo Greg's. Get out in nature. There's a lot of cool things around Vegas, but take in a show for sure. Greg, now you're going to add 1 thing not to do in Vegas.
There are a lot of things not to do in Vegas, and I think a lot of people go to Vegas to do the things, frankly, not to do. Look, this is just my personal philosophy. The 1 thing not to do is to gamble 1 single dollar that you are afraid to lose. Right? Go with a plan, go with an amount, and when you hit that amount, walk away. Because I see so many people super high. I watched a guy win $40,000 on a roulette table and somehow how he did it. First of all, how he had the guts to do it was so very impressive. And then he picked up his chips and he walked away.
Man.
So, and he was on a hot streak when he walked away. That's how they get you, right? My middle daughter went with Vicky and I, Delaney, who has been on the show a few times.
Yep.
He went with us, and she declared, once I trend down, once I sense a trend down, she basically was like, as soon as I start losing, I'm cutting it off. And she did, and she walked away with good money relative to what she was betting. So
Nice.
That is my number one guidance, is don't risk a single dollar you cannot afford or tolerate. It's really not whether you can afford it, because some people could afford a lot, obviously, to lose a lot. But if you can't tolerate it, don't risk it, because you will lose it. Always good money.
Yes, they're going to get you one way or the other. That's great.
We walked away even. Cumulatively, the three of us, we walked away even, and I feel like that was effectively free entertainment.
Wow.
Right.
A lot of goodness there, folks. Hey, a lot of goodness. And on that roulette table, hey, do a double check on red 19. Red 19. So that's bit me a couple times. We'll save those stories for later.
Red 19, huh?
Red 19.
So this is a fun thing that I love to see people do. So I had not really played roulette except one time before, but Vicky really loves it, and somehow she's really good at it. I don't know how you're good at a game that is so random. Right? It's not a game of skill. It is 100% game of chance. They can put all the statistics up there that they want to. You've had 4 reds in a row. Are you due for a black? Not necessarily, right? But I love the people. The fun thing about the roulette table is every single time you're standing at a roulette table, if you stand there for any amount of time or sit, somebody walks up and just throws $100 on black and or red, and if they win, they pick it up and walk away. And it's just, and sometimes if they lose, they just walk away. Right. But you get to learn. It's kind of fun to just watch that happen.
Oh man, the psychology of, just to your point, the people and the camaraderie and just the action will just kind of it's magnetic. But as Greg mentioned, hey, know your limits, and take it for entertainment. Don't look at it. I would just echo that.
And mostly, it's not what you can afford to lose. It's really what you can emotionally tolerate to lose, right? Because I don't bet big in Vegas because I'm a cheapskate. So I think of the car or accessories, not whole car, but like car accessories or parts or whatever modifications that I could be doing to a car, which is what I really enjoy, instead of losing this money in Vegas.
Right.
I just can't help it. So I keep the losses pretty low.
Well, lastly, the food is incredible. As I think Amanda has shared out on chat, go to Hell's Kitchen. Yeah, that's a some folks may hear Hell's Kitchen and it'd be kind of like one of those cop out places. We had a delicious meal there. Of course, we're big fans of who's that? The chef. Yeah, Gordon Ramsay. Man, I love watching him on TV. But check out Hell's Kitchen. Greg, you went to some place last weekend that you speak very highly
in the Wynn, which by the way is a great hotel. We didn't stay there; we stayed at Bellagio. But in the Wynn is a restaurant called Mizumi, and it is certainly the best sushi restaurant west of the Rockies. And it is very unbelievably good. But in that case, bring your wallet. We sat at a teppanyaki table with a lady who worked for the Bank of Singapore Bank, the guy who makes all Polo and Michael Kors shoes on a license, great guy, and an incredible knowledge of wines. And then another couple who we didn't quite get to understand what they did, but we were the poor people at the table. I can tell you.
Well, Great trip. I look forward to seeing a lot more pictures, hearing a lot more stories. Greg, thanks for sharing some tips with our global audience, maybe traveling into Vegas. And hey, folks, if you've been to Vegas 1,000 times, I'd love to get y'all's tips for while you're there. Greg, before we
One
sign
final
off,
tip.
yeah,
Yeah, one final tip there, Scott. Sorry. 3 days max. I mean, I don't know about you, Scott, but first of all, the pace at which you go, although we did admittedly go to bed like 10:30 one night, but then you just get up that much earlier and start earlier the next day. But the pace at which you go, 3 days, 2 nights, 3 days is about right for me. How about you?
yeah, that sounds like a great trip. In, out, you can see a lot in 3 days in Vegas,
Yeah.
and it's good to get out before you feel like you've been there too long. Hey, Greg, one last thing before we call it a day here today. And again, thanks everybody for working through, sometimes social platforms from time to time we'll have a little issue. So that happens. We'll be back next Monday.
Some more than others.
Yeah, some more than other. Right. But hey, folks, today we've talked about this before. We are releasing our interview with Jennifer McKeon with Walmart, one of their senior executives. I think she's responsible, as I recall correctly, for end-to-end delivery. Basically, as she mentioned it, Greg, if Walmart moves it, it's her and her team that manage it. So great podcast discussion.
Yeah.
Check it out. Maybe we can drop a link to that here in the chat before we call it a day. I think
Part of
YouTube
our practitioner series. She is an incredible leader, right?
Yep. Agreed. And you can find that on YouTube. You can find that wherever you get your podcast, the audio version, you name it. But enjoy that chat. Okay, Greg, what a wide-ranging
Yes.
supply chain buzz episode here today. Really enjoyed it as always. Folks, stay tuned. We got some really good stuff coming out in the next few weeks. Some big news coming out in the next few weeks. It is a glorious time to be in global supply chain. And for all of you out there that are listening while you do, listening while you move, while you manage, while you lead, while you pack, while you do whatever, thank you for what you do. Thank you for what you do. Greg, your final thought here today.
Yeah, I do really enjoy, the folks that tune in. It's funny that we don't hear from all of them, and so you don't realize how many are out there. Like just recently with Joshua, and some people who are still out there listening, but they don't sound off every single show. It's great to have everybody out there learning. Hey, you know what? If you've got an idea, if there's something in particular you'd like to talk about is exciting you or connecting you or interesting to you, let us know, because this is our show. We can do whatever we want here. And if if it's something you'd like to learn about, either we'll do some research or find some news on it, or we'll find a practitioner that can help us all learn together.
That's right. Great call out, Greg. Always a pleasure. Big thanks to Greg and Amanda and Catherine. Big thanks to all of y'all that tuned in. We'll be back next Monday at 12 noon Eastern time live. And I bet we'll have the comments. I bet LinkedIn will have the comments thing fixed so we can see from everybody. But hey, whatever y'all do, take some of this goodness that you heard over the last hour, put it into action, right? Deeds, not words, Greg. Is that right?
I think so. That I've heard you say that once or twice before. Yeah.
It's all about the action, folks. Hey, on behalf of our entire team here, Scott Luton challenge you, do good, to give forward, and to be the change that's needed. And we'll see you next time right back here at Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.